over how to start up your hyphens and dashes project, just so you started off on the right foot. Hopefully this thing will stop coming up. That's the third time it's come up. So last class I showed getting the script from Canvas, getting the audio file, then going into After Effects and chopping it up into pieces. So that's definitely your first step that you want to do to make sure that you have this stuff laid out. Okay. And then the next step you want to do is not really lock in what your final design is going to be, but at least get your workflow into that phase. Okay. So I'm going to create just a couple things that I want to have just to kind of set the stage for what my end result will kind of look like. So when I do something like this, I want to have a solid color. So just like something that's going to give it like a nice splash of color, like yellow or something. Okay, and then I'm going to put a new solid on top of this. The color doesn't matter there. And I'm going to add in a generate and add in a ramp. And I'm going to change this to a radial ramp and just move some of these lines around. And I'm going to swap my colors so that this is white and this is black. Okay. Now I'm doing this to give me kind of a vignette. That way the edges will be a bit darker and then the center will be pretty clear. I can control how dark it is or where that happens just by moving that little gradient swatch. So I'm just going to take this top thing and just change it to a multiply, and that will give me something that's a little bit more appealing to look at. I can also do some scattering. If you ever render out a gradient, you're going to see that there's a lot of banding in there. Especially right here, I can see there's some banding happening here because the displays just have a hard time showing off gradients. I'm sure if you've ever printed a gradient, you saw how ugly they look. If you add a splash of color into them, they don't look nearly as horrifying. So you can use a scatter, and what this does is it just kind of like makes a little bit of noise in there. Okay, now that doesn't look too good, but then I could add a little bit of a blur to this, and that'll kind of soften the effect. Okay, so we still kind of have a gradient, but now we have this noise in here which helps break it up so that it does display correctly. Okay, and then we can always control too, if I hit the opacity on this, I can control how dark this vignette is also. Okay, so I just want to get just a basic startup. That's like what happened here. Oh, I blurred it too much. I'm just going to make it a tiny bit bigger so it doesn't do that. Cool. Okay, so now that I have this in here, I need to go through the audio and go through the script and see what I want to do. Now a lot of this, because a lot of this is going to be text-based, we're going to be dealing with a lot of animators. Okay, so avoid just doing basic things like just having the text like move in there or fade in or just like rotate into the screen. Make it a little bit fancy. So for this, hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes. So I'm going to put each one of those on a separate line. And then I'm going to click off. And I want to, at this point, kind of look at this and say, what do I want this to look like, obviously. I don't want to stick with the standard font for most of these things, or the standard colors for most of these things. And then also look at the hyphens, M dashes, and M dashes, and just make sure you're using the correct ones, right? So like hyphen is the one that is used for breaking up words, right? And then if we look up here, where did I put it? Right there. M dash is the longest, then the N dash with the hyphen being the shortest. Okay, so once we use this and we say this N with a little dash right here, this has now become, because that's the dash part, that's our shortest one, right? So we have to make sure that that kind of stays consistent in our stuff. We wouldn't want to use an N dash for that kind of thing. Okay, so I'm going to grab all three of these and go through my fonts. And like I said before, you don't want anything crazy where it's difficult to read. Even having like a good thick font, thin font on there is kind of neat, that people will do. Something like that is maybe a little bit too fancy for text that people are supposed to read. let's just say we went with just plain Arial for now, okay? And I'll make these bigger. And then remember too, from our lower thirds one, that there's an area where the text is going to be displayed nicely. And we want to make sure that we're showing that off in the nice area. We don't want to have text that's over here in the corner, because there's a chance that it could be cut off on a screen if it's stretched or something, or cut off. All right, so here's my text. Now what I'm going to do is take my hyphens part, and I'm going to animate that one first, because hyphens is my first word right there. So that's what I want to animate first. So if you remember, we have these animators here that we could play with to have all these things kind of come in. I'm going to show how we can use this, and then how we can create our own preset that we can just drop onto any one that we want. So for this, because you don't want to have like 3 different ones, like I don't want this one to like position in, and then this one to scale in, and then this one to rotate in. That would look kind of weird. So I'm going to start off with that one, and I'll animate, let's see, I'll animate just the position coming in. And if I go to my position and I push this, oops, let's say it that way. That way when we do our offset, or we do our end, or our start, there we go. It comes in from off screen like that. Okay? So now I can go in here and set the start and set the end. Oops. Make sure I set the end further down.
Hyphens, end dashes, and M.
Okay, and then you have to time it out, because obviously if hyphens comes out that slowly and the audio is a bit quicker, it's going to look weird, because as we're reading it, it's still coming out. As we're hearing it, it's still coming out. So obviously we need to squeeze that in closer. We need to easy ease this thing.
Hyphens, end dash.
Okay. And I'm not too concerned about the position of it yet. I'm just concerned about the speed. So that's what I'm looking at.
Hyphens.
Okay. So I can move this down once I have a good spot.
Hyphens, end dashes.
There we go.
Hyphens,
and maybe even a little bit quicker.
Hyphens, end dashes.
Okay. So that's pretty good there.
Hyphens, end dash.
All right. So now what I want to do is I want to take this animator and I want to apply it to all the other ones. Now easily I could copy this, make sure I rewind first, and then paste it on each one of these, and that works too. Okay, so if you want to go the quick way to do it, that's the way to do it. On these computers you can also go to animation and you can save your preset. Okay, so this right here, this animator, is a preset that I could save and I could reuse that later. So I can go to animator, save preset. I can give this a name. It's going to go into my user presets. I will say text from right. Okay. For whatever reason, it seems to take like forever for this to save. Not really that long, but it takes a minute. Then over here in my effects and presets, I'll actually have a drop down where I can select that and apply it. Now on these computers, it doesn't save them every single time, right? So every time the computer reboots, that preset is gone. But if you had your home computer, you'd be able to see. So here's my text from right. So now I could apply that to anything. So if I were just to type some different text in here, like that, I can go to my effect, drag this on there, and now it has it. Okay? So that means across any project, if I found a preset that I liked, I could drop that on there. All right? Now what's neat too is that, let me just delete this horrible one. There's other presets that are inside here too. Here's text. These are all different ways that things can come in and out with text. I don't want you using these, but definitely use them as a guide. Okay, I don't want you using these ones as your final one, because they've been so kind of overused in the industry that people already know, oh, you just drop that specific preset on there. Okay, so let's say I'm animating text in. I'm just going to drop this onto that.
Hyphens, end dashes, and M dashes are free.
So you can see how disgusting that was. And let me turn the audio off for a second just so I stop hearing myself. Okay, and then you could also hit U, and there's the keyframes, and I could change the positioning of these to make them happen quicker if I needed to. for whatever reason you'd want that. Okay, but they are kind of good to get an idea of how something is done, or maybe get inspiration for a different way that you could animate something coming in. So like these decoder fade-ins. I don't know why I keep deleting stuff. There we go. You know, it's kind of a neat way to put it on the screen. For what we're doing, it doesn't really apply, but the slide-in one works good for us. Okay, so I just want you to see those things and see how you can save those and back them up. There's a whole bunch of stuff inside here for doing just that. Here's even ones for 3D text, miscellaneous things. Okay, so something you may want to play around with or look at some point. All right, so now we have our text again. Let me drop this back on.
Hyphens and.
All right. Now the next part is I hate having to keep rewinding and playing and rewinding and playing. What will be great is if I could just put markers in my timeline. That way I know exactly when these words are coming in. That way I know hyphens is here, M dashes is here, N dashes is there. And then I can just line my animations right up to that. Well, you can do that, okay? So I'm going to go to actually I'll do it right on this, this piece of audio. So I'm going to make sure I'm clicked on this piece of audio. Now you have a asterisk key on your keyboard on the numeric side. That one will set keyframe, or will set markers in your stuff. So if I just move here and hit the asterisk, you'll see that it created a marker right there, okay, which is very helpful. Now the best part about this is that as it's playing, I can set markers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to the audio, and I'm just going to tap that asterisk every time I hear one of those key words that I want something to happen. And I'm also going to change my work area to smaller just so it's kind of locked in there. Okay.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are frequently used punctuation.
Okay. So now I've marked 3. So this is hyphens, M dashes, and N dashes. So now it's just a matter of going to here, lining this up. Going to this one, lining that up. And then obviously make sure you have them in the right order. N dashes, what is the next? And then M dashes. So now let's see how that works.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are.
Okay, much easier to do if we have these markers in there. Especially if you're doing your demo reel and you're like, I want to make sure that something happens every time we hear the certain beat. You can listen to the song and hit that marker every time you hear that beat, and that way you'll see exactly where you need to have a change happen or something going on. Okay, so I have that in there, so it goes do-do-do.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are.
All right, and then because I'm still kind of early in the stages of this, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on, I can turn motion blur on and just kind of see what that's going to look like.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are.
Okay, and then I may decide at this point, you know, I'm going to scoot these back a little bit further, because I want them to kind of be coming on the screen before the audio.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are.
Because it feels a little bit better. It feels better with that coming on. Now for this other part here, frequently used punctuation marks that are just as frequently misunderstood. I could put that on the screen somehow, right? So there's a 1,000 different ways you could do this. Just to show you some different tools and techniques that you may want to play with that thing. There's a there's this pro plugin called Sure Target, and I'm going to do my easy ease on that. Cool. And then I can just pull this down to where it's going to be coming in.
M dashes are frequently used.
Right about there.
And M dashes are frequently used punctuation marks.
Okay, and then that one, because of how slow it I speak it, could actually come out a little bit further.
Are frequently used punctuation marks that are.
Cool. And then I'm going to take that same animation, copy it, and then rewind this, and then paste it. You have to rewind it, otherwise it'll paste those keyframes wherever you're at. So if I'm way down here, it'll paste these keyframes right there, and that's not what I want. I want everything right at the beginning because it just makes it easier to just grab this whole bar and scoot it down.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are are frequently used punctuation marks that are just as frequently misunderstood.
Okay, maybe I can pull that out a little bit more. Pull this over a little bit more, pull this one over a little bit more. There we go.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are frequently used punctuation marks that are just as frequently misunderstood.
Okay. So that's how we can get this one thing to happen. Now let's try something different. Okay, because like I said, you want to be able to experiment on these. Close. There we go. I'm also going to keep my audio at the top, whichever one I'm working on, and then just add these pieces in here underneath. And then while I'm at it, I think I want to also there it is. Give all these the same color. That way I know they all go together. So these will be not red because that's the default color. Cyan, that looks good. Okay. So that makes more sense that they're all together because they're all part of the same audio clip. Alright, so these two here I'm just going to hide. I'm going to go and re-copy this. And I'm going to take this whole thing here, right there, and I'm going to animate these, okay? Now I could go into each one of these things and animate each one of them, right? I could grab each one of these things. I want to just scoot them up is what I want to do and maybe like squish them together a little bit more. But I could also use a null too. So if I use a null shape and I parent this, I'm reducing the amount of keyframes that I have because now my keyframes are all on this. So I'm just going to go and add a position keyframe to this, scoot up a little bit, and then move this thing up higher. Because I want that other line to come in right here. Okay? So that's why I did that. So now it's going to go.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are frequently used.
That's way too slow. Squeeze those in together. Easy ease it.
Are frequently used punctuation.
Okay, and now I can squeeze that our frequently used thing right into that spot. Okay, our frequently used punctuation marks. Let's bring this down a bit. And then I'm going to take this R part after this and get rid of that. Okay, so this time I'm putting this right underneath. And what I'm going to do is because we're starting off with the word R here and R there, I'm just going to swap them. So I'm going to do a little box, and then one's going to go out of the box, the other one's going to go in the box. Okay, just like we've done before on kind of like our blips and stuff. So let's scoot that down. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to take these two pieces of text right here. And just so that it's easier to kind of cycle between these, I'm just going to pre-compose them. Okay, so this is the R understood text, which is these two. Then I can create a box exactly where I want these two pieces of text to go. All right, we've done this before with our plenty of assignments, mainly the lower thirds one. We did a lot of this on. Okay, so I'll resize that in a second. R understood here. We'll do a little clipping mask. There we go. Okay, so now what I can do is just go to the position of this and kind of sync the position animation up with the other one. So with this null, where all the pieces are moving up, I'm going to sync the movement of these other pieces coming in. So now I can grab this and scoot it up into that.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are frequently used punctuation marks that are just
so right there is my next transition. So I'm going to set a keyframe for position, go up a couple frames, and push that through. And it was off a little bit. I'd go back and tweak it. There we go.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are frequently used punctuation marks that are just as frequently misunderstood.
So there's another way that I could show that text. So there's a bunch of different ways to do this. So I don't want you to get locked in the facet of there's only one way. I'm just going to animate everything sliding into the screen or animate everything fading into the screen. As best you can, avoid using opacity for fading off the entire thing, or using one item to control everything on there. These last couple assignments are really ones where you're taking all the stuff we've kind of learned beforehand and starting to apply those things. Okay, so remember all that stuff you've learned already. You know how to set keyframes and make things go faster. None of these keyframes, because of we already know them, have I gone into this and tweaked their speed graph, but I would do that on every single one of these. That way it happens quicker. That way it's more exciting. Okay, so even though I don't show it every single time, actually I want it the other way, you still want to do this. You still want to make sure that you're animating all the stuff the same way we did it the first week. That's why we did all that stuff, so that you know it already.
Hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are frequently used punctuation marks that are just as frequently.
Okay, because it gives it a better feel when you have that extra motion in there. When you just play with the easy ease or you just drop that on, it's kind of boring. So you definitely want to have that in there too. And then if you get to the point where you're like, oh, I'm really not liking how the layout of all this stuff is, like right now I want to basically just scoot everything down some, don't forget you have other tools in your bag. So I can add another null in here. And I'm going to call this one overall movement or position. There we go. And I'm going to take all these pieces and just put them on that overall position. And what that does, is it gives me this extra null that I could then move around. And it's not changing anything, it's just except for like where the animations are happening. So now when I rewind this,
hyphens, N dashes, and M dashes are frequently used punctuation marks that are just as frequently misunderstood.
Right? I could even have hyphens come in, and then when I do N dashes, hyphens comes up and N dashes comes in. And then when I do M dashes, then that one moves down and then M dashes comes in there. Okay, there's 100 different ways to do these kinds of things. Okay, so don't get locked in on just doing one. Now once I have this one set up, somehow I have to lead into that second audio clip. So I'll pull that second audio clip to the top. I think I undid my color because now all my colors are gone, or maybe I just didn't change it to the new ones. There we go. Okay, so there's all my basic ones. All right, so now when I go to the next clip,
all three marks are essentially horizontal lines.
Okay, I have to decide, do I want to keep this? Is the information up here still relevant? Or should I get rid of this information to make way for new information? Okay, looking at the script, this is completely new-ish kind of stuff. But I may want to keep these three things on there. So I may just cycle this off. So I say, okay, well now that I have this gone, I'm going to go to this. And I'm just going to set a keyframe, go up a little bit, and then move this up. Just up, just straight up. Nope. There we go. Okay, and then that goes away. Now once that's gone, I'm going to cut it so I know that that layer has ended. And then now when I'm in this one, I'm saying all three marks are essentially horizontal lines, though their lengths vary, as do occasionally their designs. This is a great opportunity for me to then have each one of these things having a line right next to it. That way I'm associating which each one is and what their line looks like. And then when we talk about their designs, now I'm going through and kind of showing different ways that the designs could change. So for instance, hyphens, there you are. For instance, look at anything that has a stopwatch, you can set keys for. So if I wanted to change what this text is, I can simply click that stopwatch and then go up a little bit and then add a change to this text. There's a hyphen. Okay, so now
that are just as frequently misunderstood. All three marks.
So now it's going to pop in with that little hyphen mark. Some of these, like After Effects doesn't have an add an N dash in here. Yeah, it doesn't. So you'd have to just make that up. Now remember, I don't think it says it on here at all, but on your sheet that you did in 1055, it says never just like add more than, oops, come Where is that? There we go. Never do this where you're just taking this and doing that. That's not an end dash, right? You need an actual longer dash. So for that kind of thing, I would go in with my pen tool here, and I would draw out a longer dash. Not on the layer though. I need a brand new shape. There we go. And then I would make sure that this fill is nothing. Oops, not that. This. And I'd make sure that the stroke is white. I'd make sure that the thickness is there. Okay, so now this is my end dash, and then I can just duplicate that end dash. You may want to start locking layers too so you don't accidentally move them like I keep doing. There we go. 3. Come on. 3. There we go. And now I can go back to my pen tool and just stretch this one out. Okay, and then I could cycle these out. So instead of this one being like that, I could switch this hyphen to something different, switch these ones to something different. Whether they just like pop off and something new pops on, that's fine too. I could animate these things and kind of deform them. So if I went to this one here and I added some more keyframes, let's just pretend we're at the styles part. I can go to the path and set a keyframe, scooch you up a little bit. Make sure I deselect. It's kind of weird how it works, but sometimes you have to deselect it and reselect, just like in Illustrator. So there's my designed M-1. And I could do the same thing there. And then this will actually morph from one shape into the other shape. So when we're talking about different designs, I could do that. Or I could kind of cycle through, like if you've seen like the slot machines where they have like these different designs kind of thing going through that, you could do that too. Okay? The only way you're going to understand more things than just what I'm showing you here is by watching like a bunch of these. So while you're working on one step of this, just have this kind of going up in the background. Even these small ones are great. Those just to get some more ideas of different ways you can animate text, different things you can do. And then this one shouldn't take terribly too long. Once you get going and you're kind of like 3 sentences in, you'll have the design, you'll have the flow of this kind of already set up. So the rest of this should be relatively simple. Okay. If you figure about 2 weeks for this assignment, then we'll be at a good pace for the rest of the semester. Okay?